Welcome in this second video of our series. This video is about ethics and why you should care about ethics. So I try to explain to you what ethics is about and what the difference is between legal and ethics. This is not a course 101 in philosophy, so let me just use a few brief images. Actually, ethics is a container with a lot of people talking about ethics, with a lot of different elements in it. But just to show you what ethics is about and where I will talk about in the rest of this series, let me use two images. The first one is a football field, a soccer field I should say. It's a soccer field. A soccer field has lines. There's some rules if you play soccer. But actually it's not the rules that make the play beautiful, that make the play good. You need some rules, everyone will agree, because if two boys play soccer, the first thing they do is make a goal to see where some kind of, that's the basic version of lines, yes? Well, that football field points for me to actually two concepts of ethics. There's a kind of a rule-based approach on ethics. But that doesn't make the game play. That doesn't play the game. It's more about how to behave within the lines. So for me, there are actually different approaches on ethics, and the rule-based one is only one approach. Second image I like to use is the image of a pizza. I have 3 children. If I order one pizza, then we all have one piece, maybe 2 pieces, but then we're still hungry. Well, actually it's the same for ethics. If you only look to one kind of ethical theory, you stay hungry. So my suggestion is to combine different approaches in ethics. And I'll try to do that in the last video when we come to a more practical approach of data ethics. I didn't show you the image of a pizza, of a whole pizza, because I think even if you combine different ethical theories, we never have the final answer. Ethics is not black or white. You have to discuss ethics. So I won't give you all the answers. I will try to give you some elements to ask the right questions, and maybe some elements to give partial answers. But know that no one in ethics has the definitive answer. If someone tells you that this is 100% the right ethical approach, then you should be very skeptical about that. Okay. If you look to all those theories, is there some kind of common ground? I think there is. I think all ethical theory has something to say about human behavior. And if we look at human behavior, and that's a concept of Joe Selling I like to use, then there's a kind of polarity in the approaches ethics uses to look at human behavior. There are certain ethical theories that look at human behavior from the perspective of intention. Do I have a good intention? Then, for example, it's about good character. Do people want to do the right thing? And in history there have been a lot of different theories dealing with some kind of aspect of intention. Yes? I won't go through all of them, but you see some maybe familiar names like Aristotle and Kant. Human behavior, you can look at it from intention, but you can also look at it from the perspective of consequences and risks. And actually, that's, for example, the approach that is used a lot in dealing with artificial intelligence. There's a rule-based approach there, and sometimes there's a risk-based approach used. There are also a lot of different ethical theories. The most famous example here is utilitarianism. But remember, without going into the depth of those theories, that it's good to look at the intention and to look at the consequences. In the context, for example, of artificial intelligence, the context of data, then it starts with intention. If no one wants to act in an ethical way, then nothing will happen. That's about intention. But we also have to look at the consequences. If we develop some kind of tool, or if we use some kind of data, what will be the consequences? Maybe there will be positive consequences, and that's why you want to develop some kind of technology, but we also have to look at the negative consequences, at the risks involved in a certain kind of technology. Very basic, but just to show you what this is about in the context of data and artificial intelligence. Okay, the whole of this, looking at human behavior, is certainly part of a context that is also very important in our ethical reasoning. I'll come to that later. Okay, so we looked at ethics from the perspective of two images, the soccer field and the pizza. But actually my pizza is now divided in different pieces, looking to different kind of ethical theories. And that's what I will try to combine. Without explaining you the whole philosophy, I'll try to combine all, at least the theories you see on the screen, I'll try to combine those theories to one way of dealing with ethics in the context of data. More about that later. Okay. The next concept I want to talk about is a concept introduced by Pieter Paul Verbeek. And Verbeek says that technology is actually not neutral. Technology is influencing the way we shape reality, the way we live life. And how does technology influence that kind of reality? Well, actually it influences us in three ways. Not all technology, of course, influences in all three ways, but there's technology that influences our behavior. For example, the traffic camera that is on the slide. If you pass by a traffic camera, most drivers do, you slow down. Yes, but remember to look also from the other perspective. If you make that kind of technology, you have the power to influence the behavior of all those drivers. And it's this turnaround I want to take with me to explain to you later what to do with technology. But technology influences our behavior. Traffic camera. Other example is, for example, the microwave. Since the microwave was introduced, a lot of people eat together less because they have the opportunities to just warm up whatever meal they have. They see that people don't eat together that often anymore. Next, technology also influences our reality. Think about the medieval city. If you ever visited a medieval city, then in the core there are very small alleys where you can walk through, but you can never pass by a car. Why? Well, no one had a car. The car wasn't invented yet. If you look at the map nowadays, then you've got broad roads where 1, 2, 3, 4 cars can pass by at the same time. So the reality and the way, for example, we build houses now has been influenced by that one piece of technology, the car. I could give you other examples. Boats, for example. They have a longer history than the car, but they also influence the way people dealt with reality. And the way reality was shaped has been influenced a lot later with the car. Okay, third, perception of reality. One example that comes to mind is the one of an echo. If you go to a gynecologist, if a woman is pregnant, they put a little device, a piece of technology on the belly, and you can look at the baby. One of the consequences of this kind of technology is that a gynecologist can say, I don't know, on how many weeks, 5 weeks or something, can say what will be, if it will be a boy or a girl. What will be the gender of the baby. We had a couple of friends where the gynecologist had mistaken. And they were told that it would be a boy, and actually when she was born, because it was a her, when she was born, it was a girl. It took the mother 3 weeks to get over the idea, because the moment the gynecologist said it was a boy, it has shaped her perception of all of the pregnancy, expecting a lot of things. For example, if you know it will be a boy, maybe the father is thinking about, oh, it will be nice, we can play football together, or it influences the color you paint the room in. I don't know what can be influenced by it, but the first thing that is influenced is your perception, the way you dream, the way you think about the baby. So technology has the power to influence our behavior, to influence our reality, and to influence our perception. And I told you that it might be interesting to think at it the other way around. If we make some kind of technology, what kind of influence do we want, and can we match that kind of technology with the influence we want? For example, if we want a value to be more pertinent in reality, can we make some technology to improve that value in reality? I'll come to that in next videos. So technology is not neutral. Not all technology is neutral. It actively shapes our existence and the way we experience the world. One of the concepts, if I put those things together, that I like a lot is the concept of ethical alignment. What does ethical alignment mean? That means, in our context, that you develop or you design that kind of technology that influences the reality in the way you want, in the way that is according to your own values. So actually the question here is, how are our values and vision reflected in the technology we design and we use? And there are some elements that are necessary if we want to influence the design of our technology. First, we have to be aware on the values of our own organization. Yeah, if we want to improve some values, yeah, then you at least have to reflect what kind of values. What are our values as an organization? Most of the time, this is part of a vision of a corporate culture, even of structure of the organization. Second, there are a few things we have to take care of if we want to be sure that ethics will be part of our organizational culture. And the first one is we need some kind of procedures. For example, if you start a data project, is there a kind of procedure to deal with ethics? Is there a place given to ethics within your organization? And if you zoom into the project, is there someone responsible for ethics in the project? Because we know from research that if there's no one responsible in your project for ethics, then there's a big chance that nothing will come out on ethical values. Okay. So ethics, to resume, is about human behavior, about intention, about risks and consequences. If we put those together, then ethics is knowing about the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. Actually, what comes through here is the difference between ethics and law. And that's what I want to talk about in the rest of this video. Actually, a lot of people ask me, if we already have law, why do you need ethics? Well, let me say that there's a kind of a relationship, an important relationship between ethics and law. Most of the time, ethics is if we look at ethics, it's the way we behave, human behavior, remember, it's the way we behave. And yeah, if we look to different time periods, that kind of behavior can be influenced by a lot of things and can change. So ethics can change over time. Values might be universal, but what kind of values come out and what kind of values come out later is influenced by the context. So ethics is changeable. And ethics, you can be punished, like in law, you can be put in prison because you didn't act in an ethical way if you didn't break the law. Most of the time, ethics remains kind of abstract. We know how to behave in a social context, but no one has written it down. Well, there has been some attempts, but actually we don't have a body of written down rules that we have to live to, and where we can be punished if we violate this kind of ethics. That's the difference with law. Law has been written down, has a legal binding, there are some kind of agreements, and if someone is breaking the law, they might be punished. They might get a punishment. They might be imprisoned if it's really bad. So law is something different than ethics. Ethics is just a branch of moral philosophy that shapes our reality, that has to do with our perception of reality, with the way we live life. And if you look at ethics and law, then actually ethics is most of the time the basics for law. It's incorporated in law. But it takes time to incorporate ethics in law. That means that ethics is a lot more flexible than law, because it takes time to translate ethics in law. And that's actually the first way ethics and law are related. Ethics can be translated in law. Ethics can also be used if there are two contradictory laws, or if the law is not clear, then you can look at ethics to interpret the law. But there's also another way of thinking about ethics and law. And then we talk about hard ethics. Well, hard ethics is challenging the law, because sometimes the way we look at reality is changing. For example, there's a very famous example in apartheid. Lisa Parks was sitting on a space on the bus that was actually for white people, which is not ethical in my point of view, but it was according to the law. But she challenged the law by just sitting there. That's also a task for ethics. So ethics and law are not the same. Most of the time we have law as like the minimum you have to do, and then ethics builds up. If you want to behave in an ethical way, then most of the time it needs more reflection than just doing the minimum. So why should we care about ethics in the context of data? Let me look at 5 elements here. If we want data scientists and AI developers, because I always take AI with me in this context, to embed ethics into dealing with data and data-supported decision-making systems, then their understanding of ethics and their ability to make ethical decisions is crucial. Understanding ethics makes developers aware of different ethical theories. Studying different ethical theories broadens the perspective of that individual developers, and knowledge of those theories supports developers to take informed decisions. Ethics make developers aware of potential risks for individuals and society and enable them to mitigate those risks. Ethical considerations stimulate innovative and creative solutions. Developers who think critically about ethical aspects of their work can discover new approaches to AI design or new possible applications. And ethics helps to interpret and apply regulations. So ethics helps to understand reality in a broader way, to be aware of some kind of potential risks. Remember, consequences, risks are part of the ethical system. And actually, ethics can be used to stimulate innovation. I'll come back to that later. Next video will be on how to talk about technology and why that is influencing ethics. See you in the next video.